reaction to the war in Israel and Gaza spread to the streets around the world yesterday. Both rhetoric and tensions were high as some tried to explain the bloody, brutal conflict that's left more than 3,000 people dead in just 7 days. Michael George is here with more. Michael, good morning.
Dana, good morning. New York City saw the largest U.S. gatherings of pro-Israel and of pro-Palestinian supporters. Now, these demonstrations were largely peaceful, but security remains heightened in cities and outside some religious institutions.
Palestine will be free!
Cries of Free Palestine rang out in New York City Friday as thousands of protesters denounced Israeli bombings of the Gaza Strip.
It's not a Jewish thing, it's not a Muslim thing, it's a human rights thing, and we're sick of it.
But demonstrators who marched to Times Square were met with pro-Israel demonstrators. Even some were clear they were not against the Palestinian people, but against the militant Hamas group that controlled them in the Gaza Strip, where more than 1 million Palestinians live.
Israel has nothing to do with the Palestinian people. And this is something that people need to understand. The one who controls the Palestinian is the Hamas.
Police in the two most populous U.S. cities, New York and Los Angeles, said they were stepping up patrols after a former Hamas chief called for a global day of rage. Still, no credible threats have been reported. One New York rabbi says congregants are scared to go to their synagogue.
We have families that have reached out to us asking, we're supposed to have an event, a bar mitzvah. Can you please help us find private security that can be at the synagogue? Otherwise, we're not going to do it.
While staff at a Palestinian American community center in New Jersey say they're stepping up security.
Bulletproof vests, armed security guards will be present at each mosque.
Throughout the world, demonstrations yesterday and since the fighting started. There's widespread concern for civilians caught in the brutal attacks by Israel's security forces and Hamas militants. Ron Hassner is a Berkeley professor who studies religion and terrorism.
It is fair and reasonable for the international community to call on the safeguarding of civilians. It is reasonable for the international community to hold Israel accountable for civilians who are harmed in the fighting, while at the same time understanding that this is not a symmetrical conflict. Hamas is using civilians as shields and is hiding behind them.
Now, here in New York, there were about 50 protesters arrested for blocking traffic. That's disorderly conduct. Also on Friday, national security officials met at the White House to discuss how to protect Jewish and Muslim communities across the country. Jeff?
Michael, thank you very much. We also do want to repeat this breaking news this morning. The AP is reporting that a top Egyptian official says that Egypt, Israel, and the U.S. will now allow people fleeing Gaza to pass through the Rafah border crossing into Egypt. That is the main border crossing in the south. So that is interesting news. One question remains whether Hamas, if they're in control in some of those areas there, will allow people to leave.
Right.
As we know, they've been telling them to stay put because they use civilians as shields.
Yeah, it's been a very emotional and trying week for so many out there, and that obviously will continue.
We'll keep watching it.